what is of critical interest to us? I mean, let's look at that from a purely military standpoint. Number one, the Chinese have never stopped a commercial vessel. In other words, commerce moves in and out of China through the South China Sea, through the Malacca Straits, into the Indian Ocean and back, and between the Sea of Japan and the United States. No one interferes with that. Chinese don't interfere with it. So that's number one. That's important. We would like that to stay. And I don't see any evidence that the Chinese want to change that because they're very dependent on that. As we discussed earlier, what happens if the Straits of Hormuz are closed? They're in a lot of trouble because the Russians will give them all the natural gas and oil they can, but it's not enough to sustain that country. So that's the first thing. Second thing is these little islets. North Vietnam actually has militarized, fortified, and controls more little islets than China does. We never hear about that. Of the countries in the region, I would say the most oppressive, other than North Korea, is Vietnam, infinitely more oppressive. You know, the big joke in that part of the world where there's Confucian culture, and I'm sure you understand what that means. If you look at in their court system, if you are accused of a crime and you go to court, the probability of being found guilty in China is 99%. In Japan, it's 98%. In South Korea, it's 98%. In Taiwan, 98%. In North Korea, of course, 100%. And in Vietnam, 99%. So, gee, just tell me what you want to change, okay? You're out of your mind. You're not going to change anything in that part of the world. So give up on all this nonsense of democratizing anybody. And most of the people in the world are looking at us and say, well, if this is evidence for liberal democracy, what we see in America and Europe, we don't want it. And if you're looking for what they do want, and I've spent time in Asia, what the Chinese on Taiwan and the Chinese in China want, they all want to live in Singapore. And Singapore is a very successful fascist state. That's what they want. They're interested in making money, living well. And if somebody gets out of line in their culture, that person needs to be punished and dealt with. So let's understand the cultural preferences. When you look at the South China Sea and the claims that are made there, Taiwan shares in all of those claims. Both Taiwan and the mainland Chinese all make the same claims. There's no difference at all. No one ever talks about the Taiwanese. No one ever talks about the islands that the Vietnamese control. Now, here's another very important point. How long do you last on any of those islets if you put any military power on them? Most admirals in the U.S. Navy would say 10 to 15 minutes because there's no way to protect yourself. It's impossible. So do they really threaten anybody? Well, if they do, they won't threaten very long. So the key thing is we should be interested as Americans in what we've always been interested in, which is business and trade. If that flows freely and unencumbered, then we shouldn't be a part of what goes on there. And if you leave the people in the region alone long enough, they'll sort it out. The Vietnamese and the Chinese, who hate each other and would go to war tomorrow if they thought it was necessary without hesitation, have established a hotline between Beijing and Hanoi City or Ho Chi Minh City, right? So they don't want to go to war. They're not stupid. The Filipinos, the president of the Philippines is saying, we probably don't need these Americans. They're a catalyst for trouble because he's picked up the phone and called Xi, and things have sorted out in the Philippine Sea. Are these things going to happen again? Well, Vietnamese and Chinese fishermen routinely pull up next to each other, and it looks like the Battle of Trafalgar. Well, that's their problem, not ours. So I think you understand that. Now, finally, China is headed into a very deep recession right now. Their banking system is a catastrophe. And every morning, President Xi wakes up and he says the same thing. Probably. I don't know for certain. He hasn't confided me, but he doesn't say, how can I attack America? That's crap. He says, how do I hold 1.4 billion Chinese together? So I am not worried about the Chinese. And I don't think we need to be in the condition we are, in the posture we are in Asia. because I also know something else. I've seen the Japanese Navy. I've seen the Japanese Armed Forces. And if they had to fight the Chinese at sea, the Chinese are finished. The Japanese are superb.